Hey, how's it going, guys? It's your boy. Now, recently, the Labour Party, once again, have gotten into trouble in regards to anti-Semitism. Yeah, well, nothing new there, right, Mitch? Well, you see, this is new, because now that Jeremy Corbyn is on the way out, there is now a power vacuum that needs to be filled. They're currently having a leadership contest to see who will replace Corbyn within the next couple of months. So we have candidates like Keir Starmer, my own MP Rebecca Long-Bailey, Jess Phillips as well, who has entered the race. All these people are trying their best to win the contest, to persuade Labour voters that they are the man or the woman for the job. But that also means that certain things need to, at least on the surface, appear to change. And this means that they need to look like they're not anti-Semites, that the party will not have an anti-Semite problem in the near future, or they have enlisted the help of a Jewish organisation known as the Jewish Board of Deputies. Now, apparently, according to a lot of annoyed Labour supporters, these people who run this organisation are all linked to the Tories, but anybody who they consider to be in conflict with them are Tories, so I would advise to take that with a grain of salt, even if they are. Clearly, the Labour Party don't consider that to be an issue because they're purely working together in a business relationship to try and come up with 10 points, this is what it was, 10 points to basically get rid of anti-Semitism. It is a pledge, a 10-point pledge. And we're going to go through this pledge because this story is brilliant. It's the tale of the two 10-point pledges. And this is the 10 pledges to end the anti-Semitism crisis as done by the Board of Deputies and the Labour Party. Basically, this is a confirmation that yes, indeed, contrary to Shami Chakrabarty's little investigation when she decided to push things under the rug in the name of the party, yes, there is indeed a crisis in the Labour Party. It is full of anti-Semites. There was a recent independent study that came out which blasted hers completely out the water. So now they have to admit they have an issue. Good on you, Labour. You're being honest for once. Number 1. Resolve outstanding cases. All outstanding and future cases should be brought to a swift conclusion under a fixed timescale. Number 2. Make the party's disciplinary process independent. An independent provider should be used to process all complaints to eradicate any risk of partisanship and factionalism. So far, so good. Resolve all the existing cases and actually make the disciplinary process independent so it can be impartial. That is sound. That makes sense. What's wrong with this? Number 3. Ensure transparency. Key affected parties to complaints, including Jewish representative bodies, should be given the right to regular detailed case updates on the understanding of confidentiality. Again, makes perfect sense. Prevent readmittance of prominent offenders. It should be made clear that prominent offenders who have left or been expelled from the party, such as Ken Livingstone and Jackie Walker, will never be readmitted to membership. Well, that remains to be seen. Provide no platform for bigotry. Any MPs, peers, councillors, members or CLPs who support, campaign or provide a platform for people who have been suspended or expelled in the wake of anti-Semitic incidents should themselves be suspended from membership. That's all well and good, but as we know, this is only one part of the Labour bigotry problem. There's still the case of their seething hatred of the Gammons, which, funnily enough, a lot of the more lighter-skinned Jews would be called Gammons, so they have that issue they need to deal with, and also the silly affirmative action type things that they do, patronising people of colour, as they would say. There's a lot more issues, but hey, you know what? Let's just deal with the biggest issue right now, which is this, and then obviously all the rest of the issues should, hopefully, in theory, I'm being sarcastic here because I don't think any of this is actually going to be taken on board by the Labour Party because of their ideology. All the rest of it will be magically fixed, obviously, right guys? Number 6. Adopt the international definition of anti-Semitism without qualification. I'm actually surprised they haven't done that, but let's see what they say here. The IHRA definition of anti-Semitism with all its examples and clauses and without any caveats will be fully adopted by the party and used as the basis for considering anti-Semitism disciplinary cases. Now, it's not a perfect definition, but it's a better definition than most. So I guess finally they're deciding to, actually incorporate this thing that other companies and other organisations and parties around the world have adopted. But then again, it shows just how far hatred of Jewish people seems to run in this party. They've not even tried to root it out for years and years and years. They've just pushed it under the carpet. They've pretended it doesn't exist. They've allowed it to ferment and grow because, well, they're Marxists, aren't they, at this point, a lot of them, and they don't like Jews. Number 7, deliver an anti-racism education programme that's the buy-in of the Jewish community. the Jewish labour movement should be re-engaged by the party to lead on training about anti-Semitism. So basically they're asking for support of the Jewish community to help them with anti-racist stuff. They want to educate their members on how Jews are not scum of the earth, basically. The fact that they have to educate people on this, that, ordinary Jewish people aren't represented by the Israeli government all over the world, they don't have a part to play in all of this, There are people who are Jewish who are on your side, who agree with you on many issues. They're not horrible people. They're normal like you. Is just astounding. Engagement with the Jewish community to be made via its main representative groups. Labour must engage with the Jewish community via its main representative groups and not through fringe organisations and individuals. Well, that remains to be seen, but will these representative groups, if we can even call them that really, because there's many different Jewish groups in the UK, I for example lived near an Orthodox community, would they really want Labour to be going into their community, talking to them about how they're trying to be better people and trying not to hate them? I don't think they trust them. They're a very insular group as it is. Not insular in the sense they completely close themselves off, it's just, the way they are. They keep to themselves. They don't want any trouble. Do they want your trouble, Labour? I don't think they do. Number 9. Communicate with resolve. Bland, generic statements should give way to condemnation of specific harmful behaviours and, where appropriate, condemnation of specific individuals. More on that later. 10. Show leadership and take responsibility. The leader must personally take on the responsibility of ending Labour's anti-Semitism crisis. Again, that remains to be seen. Which person replaces Jeremy Corbyn? He is a well-known anti-Semite. He's basically anti-Western in general and also happens to be an anti-Semite. So he personally didn't do anything because it wasn't in his best interests to do so. Will Long Bailey do it, who's basically his protege? No, I don't think she will. She doesn't give a shit about the Jewish community in Salford and Manchester. She doesn't care about them. Jess Phillips, she will pretend to, I reckon. She doesn't actually care. It's the left-wing ideology she cares about. Keir Starmer, I have no idea. I only really just recently heard of him. And all the rest, I don't know. It remains to be seen. But I think the rest of them aren't going to become the leader because it's those three that are the main potential winners. So anyway, those are the 10 pledges to end the anti-Semitism crisis, and on the whole, this is nothing really that a Labour supporter should really be offended about. They should agree with this. They should understand that there is a genuine issue. There have been several investigations that have confirmed this, apart from the one that was a sham by Shami Chakravarti. What's wrong with this? Well, Rachel Swindon will tell us. This is Rachel Swindon. She is a Labour Party supporter. I have no idea how low or high she is in the hierarchy, but she is a Labour Party supporter and has recently gone viral because she's really not happy with these 10 pledges. And this is what she has to say about the Board of Deputies being brought in to help the Labour Party. Dear Conservative backing Board of Deputies, before interfering in our election process, we require you to sign up to these 10 points and unequivocally endorse them in full. You see, Board of Deputies, you think you can just waltz in here and apparently interfere in our election? Because, of course, the Jews interfere in elections, guys. We need you to unequivocally endorse our 10 points first. Firstly, they're not coming in here to interfere with the election. They've been brought in by the higher-ups to do a job, to fix the anti-Semitism crisis. They're not there to influence the election. I know you think that Jews all around the world influence things in other countries to their own weird benefit, Rachel, but this is not what the Board of Deputies are doing. They're here for a specific reason. They're not interested in your election. And even if they are Conservative backing, who cares? It's pretty clear that they're not particularly partisan and they are willing to help you. Surely you should just disregard factionalism and tribalism for 1 week, or however long it takes for them to do this, and just work with them. But you can't, because you're a communist, and that's how you think. Let's just move on, guys, because the 10 points are... they're spicy, guys. And these are the 10 points. We, a diverse community drawing on all ethnicities, creeds and colours, ages and genders from across the UK, demand the British Board of Deputies should hereby publicly address the following points. Well, unless you're white, Jewish, male, old, particularly if you're a boomer, we don't really want you in our party anymore. We would expect a reasonable and respected representative body from the diverse UK community to publicly and unequivocally endorse these in full. Number 1. Before advising political parties on what constitutes racism, the BOD should condemn all atrocities by the Israeli military in the West Bank. Whoa, false equivocation there, guys. Firstly, military atrocities are not the same thing as racism. They can be informed by racism, but they are not the same. This is a false equivocation. Also, you have to source what these military atrocities actually are. Also, the Palestinians use human shields, particularly young babies and kids, to stop the Israelis from bombing their terrorists. talk about war atrocities. 2. The BOD should condemn the removal, ethnic cleansing of Palestinian communities for the building of Israeli communities. Again, you are in no position to talk about the plight of the Palestinians, or whatever plight that might happen to be, when you're an anti-Semite. Or at the very least, if you're not one, your party has an anti-Semitic issue. This is you basically trying to get them to kowtow to you for your own interests. You don't want to fix the issue because, well, you probably think that Jews are quite horrible people. Again, this is an entirely anti-Jewish, anti-Israeli thing, and we'll get into the anti-Jewish bit in just a bit, guys. Number 3, the BOD must highlight and unequivocally voice its concern over the corruption in the Netanyahu government and lobby the current UK government to recognise Netanyahu as a corrupt official. The problem is, the BOD are not Israelis, they're British. They are, as you say, the British Board of Deputies. They're not Israelis. Maybe some of them are, but why? Why should they lobby the current UK government and denounce a foreign government that they're not actually citizens of? Why? Why are you telling them to denounce a government that they're not a part of just because they happen to be Jews and that government also happens to be Jews? That is racist. 4. The BOD should throw their weight behind calls for the PM to apologise over his comments relating to Muslim women, people of colour, misogynist comments relating to women and the Hillsborough disaster, blah 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 blah. Again, you lot have done similar things, you've done worse things, please no. 5. The BOD should lobby the UK government to limit arms sales to Israel to prevent further militarised genocide to the Palestinian people and support the ICC investigation into alleged Israeli war crime. Militarised genocide. I didn't know that genocide could be non-militarised. I didn't know that genocide was not done in acts of war. Wow, amazing, right? But first, how do you know this is genocide? But as far as I'm aware, there are no genocides happening by the Israelis. 6. BOD should publicly lobby to prevent Israeli interference in UK politics. Wow, if it's not the Russians we've got to be careful of, it's the Jews. Again, why should this one company or organisation, whatever they are, lobby the UK government against a government that they're not even beholden to, simply because they're Jewish? 7. The BOD should publicly voice its opposition to the US occupation of Iraq and sanctions against the Iranian people. Wow, so not only are these people anti-Semitic, they're racist, communist, this, that and the other, they're also traitors, because rather than back their own country or even lend support to their allies, regardless of what you think, look, I don't agree with the whole thing regarding Iran and the US. However, Iran is a global sponsor of terror. As I pointed out in the recent video, they are our enemies. They have said that they are our enemies, that we are their enemy. Therefore, you really ought not to be backing this country and this regime, because you're going on and on and on about Israel being this, Israel being that, doing this, doing that, when actually Iran is probably guilty of all those things and worse. And why should they publicly voice their opposition to this? Why? Again, because they're Jewish. 8. The BOD should voice opposition to abuse and racism-fueled vandalism directed to all communities in the UK, and particularly if it relates to Muslims. Because of course, it's Muslims that are the most oppressed people in the country, even though, as we know, it's not so clear-cut as that. They're not actually oppressed, and indeed, if recent stories are to be believed, which they are true, by the way, guys, just so you know, they're the ones going out there, at least members of their community or communities, because, you know, there's no such thing as just Muslims. There are Sunnis, there are Shiites, there are loads of different cults and sects of Muslims, just like Christians. So which Muslims they refer to, I don't actually know. But Pakistani Muslims in particular seem to be causing a lot of issues regarding grooming gangs and rape and things like that. So why exactly should the BOD voice their opposition to abuse and racism-fueled vandalism, when surely that needs to be called out by the Labour Party? No, instead the Labour Party attack their own MPs that call out this stuff and say, look, political correctness has caused this issue, we need to address it. No, instead, we just need to stop doing any of that and just do it for diversity, right, Rachel? 9. The BOD should recognise the awards that Jeremy Corbyn has attained as a lifelong anti-war and human rights campaigner and applaud his achievements, which have been internationally recognised. I'd like to know exactly who has actually recognised Corbyn internationally for these things. Are they Iranian? Are they communist? Because as far as I'm aware, he's none of those things. He supports the IRA, or did support the IRA in the 1980s. They were a paramilitary organisation, so clearly he's not anti-war because he backs paramilitary organisations that go around committing murder, crime. Don't get me wrong, the Protestants did the exact same thing, but the IRA did it as well. So he is supporting known gangsters and criminals. He supported the Argentine military junta against his own nation in regards to the Falklands. He wanted the Falklands to go to them. Did he attack them for invading the Falklands? I'm not so sure. He still thinks to this day that Argentina deserves the Falklands over bullshit claims. He supports Hezbollah and the Iranian state, who constantly causing war and strife in the Middle East and have abysmal human rights records, as did the Argentine junta, and also the IRA don't particularly have a good human rights record. But apparently he's an internationally recognised human rights campaigner, and the BOD need to bend the knee to Grandpa Corbyn and kiss his ring. Because they're Jewish, because they're conservatives, because Jeremy Corbyn could do nothing wrong, and he's been slandered and slighted and libelled, and none of this is true about him, even though he has escalated this problem because he himself has these issues and wants these issues in the Labour Party to root out the Jewish menace. This is the guy that's gone on Iranian TV to attack Israel and Jews, but hey, you know what? Bend the knee, BOD. Bend the knee to the dear leader, who isn't going to be the dear leader for long, but he's still the dear leader. Cult of personality is just astounding. And finally, number 10. The BOD should disassociate itself from the Conservative Party and cease to issue ultimatums to other political parties, as this is dangerous for democracy and the trust of all ethnic and minority communities across the UK. First, you do not speak for ethnic minorities, especially since, if going by your name, you are white, so you do not talk for all communities. Second, this is not dangerous for democracy, because I don't know if they've been issuing ultimatums or not. What they issued to the Labour Party is not an ultimatum, it is something they're working together with them to root out people like you. This is why you've lashed out and you have these little 10 points. And why should they disassociate themselves with another political party? They have the right to just decide who they want to work with. And you don't even care about democracy, because you're probably an FBP-er, which is follow back pro-EU. You're the type of person who thinks we should have a second referendum, that the vote was wrong, we shouldn't leave the EU, you'd be hell-bent on stopping it. I bet that's what you are, aren't you? So anyway, what do I think about these 10 points? It's just anti-Semitic, isn't it? And indeed, one of the definitions of anti-Semitism is indeed trying to basically make all Jews responsible for the acts of Israel and Jewish people in general. I mean, in fact, that's just racism in general, you know. Oh, all blacks should apologise for rioting in Ferguson or something like that, you know, crime, you know, the 13% blah 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 thing. That's racism, because people who have not committed any crimes in their lives, who happen to be black, should not have to talk the criminals. They should not have to apologise for these people and take responsibility for them because they did nothing wrong. These are individuals. It should be those individuals that should be punished, basically. Likewise, the BOD should not have to speak against Israel because you want them to, because you hate them. It's ridiculous. They shouldn't have to bend the knee to help you. So no, this is a terrible list. It's narcissistic, it's hubristic, and I don't see you actually being removed from the Labour Party anyway. So anyway, I wish it could end there. But it doesn't, guys. Alex Holmes, who is a Labour Party member, I don't know if he does any campaigning, but I assume he does, he chimed in that very same day, or at the very least a day after, I can't recall, about a meeting that he was in regarding anti-Semitism and things like that. This is what he had to say. Tonight was the worst Labour Party meeting I've ever attended. A member accused me and others of being agents of a foreign power as they proposed a motion attacking the board of deputies of British Jews. Me and the Jewish member spoke against the motion, but the motion passed. Their motion claimed that there was no anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, and the proposers used multiple anti-Semitic tropes to make their point that the Board of Deputies is a Tory organisation illegally interfering in the Labour leadership contest. For the most part, the Labour Party needs to come back together and reunite, but for people intent on being racist and supporting racists, there's only one answer. Racists of any kind have no place anywhere near the Labour Party, nor any other mainstream political party. The members who proposed the motion yesterday have now published it online, and not including the comments they made alongside it, which were indistinguishable from the text of the motion, as no copies of the motion were provided to members at the meeting. And this, I believe, was in Ilford South, and this is what they said. And he quote tweets a man called Lee Harpin, who was posting the full detail of the motion passed at the branch meeting. So let's go through that, shall we? This branch condemns the Board of Deputies' attempts at interference in the Labour Party leadership election by demanding that candidates sign 10 pledges, one of which suggests outsourcing the Labour Party's disciplinary processes to a third party. Their demands reflect the views of only one section of the British Jewish community, but they seek to prescribe the views of other Jewish groups who don't agree with them, labelling them as fringe groups to be ignored and discounted. The board has been consistent in its support for the Conservative Party, fulsomely welcoming the election of Boris Johnson, whose writings and actions expose a racist, homophobic and anti-Semitic mindset, yet they make no criticism of this, or the fact that the Tory party members aren't bound by the IHRA definition. Well, I'd have to look that up to find out if they aren't bound by it. However, neither are you, and it's pretty clear that you have such an issue that you need to be bound by it, because the Tory party don't seem to have as much of an issue with anti-Semitism as you guys do. And look how they constantly frame this as interfering in the election thing by getting these people to sign these pledges, when it's pretty clear that perhaps the leadership themselves want this because they want to clean up the image of the Labour Party, give it a blank slate for all the lost voters, especially lost Jewish voters. This is not interfering in the election. They are not trying to influence votes. This is a pledge, nothing more. How this affects democracy, I don't know, but these are the same people who have a warped view of it anyway. They don't actually support democracy. Democracy is whatever it is that they want it to be. And as for the Board of Deputies, no, they don't represent all Jews. Neither do you. You don't represent all people. You don't represent all leftists. You don't even represent all minorities like you claim you do. And neither do these fringe groups, who are probably weird far left types, just like you. This branch particularly notes that the pledges breach free speech and human rights, and do not include all forms of racism. Well, because it's about anti-Semitism, you idiots. That's what it's about. It's very clear that it's about anti-Semitism, because that is one of the main issues in your party. Yes, you're all a bunch of racists in general, I agree. However, they're taking it one issue at a time, it seems, or at least the biggest one, which is the anti-Semitism at the moment. Now you believe in free speech because you lot believe in hate speech laws. Now you don't believe in hate speech laws, so now you think you should go around and just abuse all these Jewish members of the Labour Party with no punishment whatsoever, because according to the law, that's what should happen. If you do that to these people, you need to be punished. Well, apparently, now these laws need to go out of the window because it's you being victimised by them. Well, you shouldn't even be supporting things like that in the first place then, should you? They do not represent the diversity that exists in our branch or the country as a whole. Most of the country is white. We're not a very diverse country, actually. But even then, neither the Labour Party. You're all mostly white. Accordingly, we call upon candidates to reject this interference and review any decisions, to sign the pledges and urge any candidates that have not thus far signed to reject their demands. And they have obviously voted to reject this because it's just Ilford. However, I have reason to believe that this is going to be one among many of the grassroots Labour areas that reject this because, well, it's endemic. Prejudice in general seems to be largely endemic within the party at this point, particularly anti-Semitism, and I can see why these people are lashing out because they're potentially going to be kicked out and lose their seats of power, however minor it is. Their whole lobby potentially be uprooted and chucked out, if all goes well. And by the way, speaking of being undemocratic, Labour students has been trending on Twitter because it turns out that actually these practices are endemic within the whole Labour Party themselves, and apparently they've been disbanded because of things like this. And where apparently they had 30,000 members, but only 507 were allowed to vote. Well, isn't that interesting, guys? And there we have it. Labour really isn't doing much, I would say, to actually try and root out this issue. They are always going to be the party of extremists at the moment, and I don't see anything actually changing. They have a rotten core. They have a rotten foundation in their party, and it's pretty clear that nothing has actually changed. Even with the resignation of Jeremy Corbyn, it's pretty clear that the rot has set in. The backlash against this pledge, which is trying to fix a legitimate issue, the grassroots are lashing out, and the Labour Party is fucked. So anyway, that's the end of the video, guys, and I'll see you later.